moving through these huge wheels, sort of churning the water as it moves through. This is Ukraine, the state, trying to do what it can, but of course it can't help the Ukrainians across the river because Russia remains in such firm control over there, and the events of these catastrophic floods, what's gone on at the Kakhovka Dam, has made any potential liberation here, any potential capturing by Ukrainian troops, far more difficult.
James Waterhouse, thank you. General Sir Richard Barron's ran the UK's Joint Forces Command from 2013 to 2016, and I spoke to him earlier and asked him how confident he was that Russia had deliberately destroyed the dam.
I think it is very highly likely that Russia, which has long anticipated the prospect of a Ukrainian offensive, when it understands that that is getting underway, one of the things it would do is to inhibit the Ukrainian military ability to come east out of Kherson across the river by blowing the dam and flooding the terrain either sides of the river. And when I think they saw the Ukraine attacks over the last few days, and these were small-scale probing attacks, they took the view that now was the time to secure the northwestern flank of the approach to Crimea.
And does it do that? Does the effect of all this water there make Russia more secure in the territory it holds?
Yes, it does, at least in the short to medium term, because it makes it very much more difficult to work out how you would move particularly armoured forces across an area that is comprehensively flooded. However, that said, the indications from Ukraine are that they actually expected that Russia would stoop this low, and that their plans for the counteroffensive, whatever they are, will adjust to that. So the military effect in practical terms right now might be quite small.
Ukraine says it's advanced a maximum just over a kilometre on parts of the front around Bakhmut in the last 24 hours. I mean, obviously advancing is better than not, but it's obviously not on a large scale.
One would expect in the prelude to this major offensive, with the stakes as high as they are, for Ukraine to have to do two things. One is to shape the battlefield, in the jargon, to adjust their positions, to get people in the right place, to test Russian positions and reactions, and also to try and maximize the degree of surprise that they can impose for where they really mean to attack, when they really want to get going. So the actions around Bakhmut, for what is clearly now about a kilometre of ground, may or may not be a clear indication of that's where the offensive is going to go.
The way you're talking about shaping the battlefield, probing attacks, you clearly don't think it started again, the counteroffensive we've been hearing about for so long.
I think we are clearly in the shaping phase. That started when the Russian winter offensive, which was terribly unsuccessful, culminated in March. But I don't think we're yet at the point where the 12 brigades that have been nurtured for this offensive by Ukraine are clearly committed to battle in a way that means we would see that Ukraine had gone all in somewhere.
Ukraine says that this was a deliberate attack by Russia on the dam. They are also now suggesting that Russia could launch an attack on the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Do you think that is conceivable?
This is a war that has become existential for both parties, with these two diametrically opposed narratives, and now more than a year of intense fighting with all the costs that have come with it. So there is almost nothing, I would hope, short of the use of tactical nuclear weapons, that frankly either side would not resort to if they felt that it advanced their cause. But in the case of Russia, the proven ability to do astonishing things if it allows them to maintain their hold over occupied Ukraine is considerably greater than we would think is reasonable, or that we would expect the Ukraine side to apply. So the concern about the nuclear plant, I think, is a legitimate one, and the major brakes on that is the judgment that would be placed on Russia by the likes of China, and I think also the US and Europe. So we're relying more on that pressure than, I think, battlefield judgment.
If you were a Russian general, would you have blown up the dam?
If I were a Russian general, it's the sort of thing I would have been very tempted to do if I thought that that materially improved my ability to hold the western parts of occupied Ukraine. And there's plenty of historical precedent for that sort of thing. And if you go back even to the history of the British dam buster raids of about 80 years ago, well, that's the sort of thing that you feel you need to do in war sometimes when you're fighting for such high stakes.
You've set out the logic, the military logic of blowing up the dam. But of course, if you had as a Russian general, would it see you end up in The Hague?
Well, first of all, as a Russian general, I would have clearly had to have political authority to do that, but I would be part of the chain of causality around it, clearly. I would understand that some might interpret it as a war crime because you're flooding an area which will displace about 40,000 civilians, will kill a number, destroy an awful lot of livestock, and inflict immense ecological damage. But then I would point at the fact that I'm in the middle of a really big war for very high stakes, where already the bill for damages is about $1 trillion, and winning is perhaps, in my eyes as a Russian general, more important than trying to apply what I might call Marquis of Queensberry rules. This is not that kind of war.
General Sir Richard Barrons. There is potentially some very grim news if you're travelling through Heathrow Airport this summer. The union Unite, which represents more than 2,000 security officers at the airport, has announced 31 days of strikes covering almost every weekend from mid-June to the end of August. Katie Austin is our transport correspondent and is here. Katie, it sounds like it could be pretty grim. What's expected to be the effect of this?
Well, the exact impact isn't totally clear at the moment. I mean, to be clear, this isn't security officers across the